Hello and welcome to Budget Model Railways, and today we're going to be looking at this, which is a wiring tube to move your points. Did do a video on it a little while ago which was very popular, so just thought I'd show a bit more detail, and this is on N where the other one was on double O. And then as always I'll do a little update on where I've got to with this layout, and I've got a question for people at the end as well. So those of you which very kindly stay to the end, I've got a little question for you. So this idea of these, obviously been around quite a long while. It's quite simple. You move the point blades just by moving a wiring rod. Now, in such a small layout, to be honest, this is much easier than trying to use point motors under the track or behind the track, and works exactly the same. If you think you're going to flick a switch on a point motor and it's going to change the point, and I'm flicking a switch and I'm changing the point without any of the expense or complication of doing point motors. Now, there's also an argument, of course, well, why bother when I'm literally a few inches from the edge of the board and I can reach? And the answer to that is I've got big clumsy hands. And I have a tendency to knock wagons and things while I'm changing points. And it also means that you can't put anything scenically here because you're tending to have your hand in the way. So on my other layout where I've got overhead masts, I had to move some of them because I found I touched them with my hand. So all in all, it's quite nice and it's quite effective. So let's show you how I did that. So all we're going to use is this, which is florist's wire. This came from Hobbycraft, but I'm sure you can get it in all sorts of places. And this, which is plastic tubing. I'm sorry, I can't give you a brand or details. All I know is I bought it from Kerno Models, so I'm assuming many model shops will have it. Now, what I would say, it's the usual thing. People tend to say, well, you could have done this or you should have done that. This is my way of doing it, all right? There will be other ways of doing it, but this is a way that's worked for me. So you simply get a piece of this tube, you cut it to the right length, and you run the wire through it. Then, using a little pair of pliers, I put very carefully a little loop into it, like so. And actually on these ones, what I did was I put a little dog leg in them. If I can get it to do it this time, which I probably can't. That doesn't want to play this time. Did it easy as anything the other day. I put a little step in it basically to enable it to go up and over the roofing felt ballast. You might not need to do that on all of the locations for them. And then these are very simply stuck down with super glue and a weight on. And the knobs are nothing more complicated than an old Woolworths pencil with a hole drilled in them. And again, there's all sorts of things you can use. I've had people sort of say ends of toothpaste tubes and everything, and whatever you can find really. And I'll paint the ends of those yellow when they're done. Now, I haven't glued them on this occasion. I've tried it before, and I'm not really sure it helps. In fact, I've found with these, it seems to make the operation more reliable having them move loosely. And it's really that simple. It's very cheap to do, much cheaper certainly than trying to use point motors. It seems to be just as reliable. I'm sure people are going to start saying, oh yes, but what about polarity and DPTD switches and changing all of that, I'm afraid, is when you're using pico points is I was going to say it's nonsense, but it's not required. It's another one of these old railway myths that's been hanging around since Hornby points in the 1970s, which didn't switch power very well. You know, I was even reading recently of somebody that's gone and used pico on an exhibition layout and has gone to great expense to put wires and switches in. Pico points are utterly reliable. They will transfer the power. I was very pleased, in fact, to read another guy who'd been exhibiting a layout for 10 years, using pico points, not having any wiring to switch the power, with no difficulty at all. I was even talking to somebody who said even DCC, because they switch the power, depending on what you need to do, you don't necessarily need to put wires behind them. But certainly on this sort of layout where I've got a power feed at that end, just two wires, these points are so reliable, I don't need to start worrying about switching power. So there we go. Nice little thing. Really couldn't be simpler to do. If it took me half an hour in total last night, it was probably more like 15 minutes, once with a bit of practice, and nice and cheap. So the layout's come on a little bit. I've got my little petrol storage area there, and here's a little tail. So this piece was warped where I'd used it on a previous layout. And so I tried to bend it to get it back to being level. And of course you can see the crack right the way across it. And I split it in half. And I broke all the railings. So I've managed to fix the railings with some micro rod. So a little lesson that some of this 3D printed stuff is not very flexible. And then the idea of this is I don't need a traditional tunnel mouth. I can run my back seam along the back there. Do you know, I've just realised I made a mistake. I've put it this way round and this has got a dog leg in it. So the idea would have been to have the back seam right against it and there's going to be a gap with a hole. So it's not going to work quite as well as I thought. But I wanted to put the depot that side to give me more room. And that's realised I probably should have put it this side. I think what I might have to do, actually, is build a bit of gantry and a bit of platform to build it back there. I've only noticed that talking to you and making the video. There we go. I'll get round it. And I said I'd ask a little question. So I was reading Instagram this morning and somebody asked an interesting question, which was, we all know about these Del Prado static N-Gage Loco models that you can get quite cheaply. You can pay a lot of money for them, but you shouldn't. You can get them very cheaply. And somebody was asking which ones will run on the Kato chassis. Well, I bought several, none of which will fit. So has anybody out there bought one of the Del Prado, probably a diesel shunter of some type, that fits with a little bit of work onto a Kato 11109 or 11104 or something chassis? If anybody has, I'd be very interested to know, because I'll do a little project on it. Somebody can say to me and tell me for sure that, yep, that Del Prado Loco will fit on the chassis. Then I'll get one and we'll have a go and do a little video. So there we go. Bit more progress on this. I'll cover this with, I'm going to use some grass mat, I think, just to hide the tubes. We're going to have a little road in here. And it'll be a nice simple little layout to go with a nice simple point motors, if you like, wire and tube. So there we go. Thank you for watching and speak to you again soon.